What makes for a great leader? What are our expectations for presidential leadership? One way to think about it is to subdivide leadership into its constituent roles. Now, these roles are all derived from either constitutional statutes or subsequent laws that have passed on the basis of the Constitution, or even tradition. And generally, they provide a good oversight or a pattern for understanding what we mean by presidential leadership. And I want to run through these roles, which I describe in terms of the hats, the expectations associated with each of them. And I think there's 6 important roles, or 6 hats that presidents wear. One of them is derived from the constitutional provision that presidents need to, from time to time, recommend measures that Congress might consider. And from this brief phrase, presidents have developed as the primary agenda setters, or what we might call as chief politicians in the American system. And by this I mean simply that every president, once elected, is expected to submit a program, a list of initiatives that Congress will consider during the president's time in office. So, hat number 1, the president as agenda setter, as chief legislator. A second one, we expect the president to be chief diplomat, head of state in sense of representing the United States in relations with other countries. And again, the origins of this diplomatic role are derived from the Constitution. The Constitution says the president will negotiate treaties. The Constitution says the president will receive ambassadors from other nations. And it makes sense that the president will perform this chief diplomatic role because among our elected officials, the president is the only one with a national constituency. And so the president is best situated, for instance, to mediate in the dispute in the Mideast between the Israelis and the Palestinians, as Bill Clinton did for much of his presidency. The Palestinians, I'm sorry. So a second hat, chief diplomat. A third hat, and closely related to this, is the role of head of state in a ceremonial sense. Now, in most countries, the head of state is a member of the royalty, or a separate position that's largely ceremonial. The United States, we have collapsed that role into the functions of the president in general. The president is expected to engage in the type of ceremonial functions that would be performed by royalty in other nations. What do we mean? Well, in the case, for instance, of a national tragedy or a disaster, as when the Challenger space shuttle exploded in the 1980s, it was Ronald Reagan who went on national TV and consoled the grieving families and consoled us as a people.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss. 19 years ago, almost to the day, we lost 3 astronauts in a terrible accident on the ground. But we've never lost an astronaut in flight. We've never had a tragedy like this. And perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers and overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes: Michael Smith, Dick Scobie, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista Mikaloff. We mourn their loss as a nation together. The families of the 7, we cannot bear, as you do, the full impact of this tragedy. But we feel the loss, and we're thinking about you so very much. Your loved ones were daring and brave, and they had that special grace, that special spirit that says, give me a challenge, and I'll meet it with joy. They had a hunger to explore the universe and discover its truths. They wished to serve, and they did. They served all of us. We've grown used to wonders in this century. It's hard to dazzle us. But for 25 years, the United States space program has been doing just that. We've grown used to the idea of space, and perhaps we forget that we've only just begun. We're still pioneers. They, the members of the Challenger crew, were pioneers. And I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them. I've always had great faith in and respect for our space program, and what happened today does nothing to diminish it. We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public. That's the way freedom is, and we wouldn't change it for a minute. We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue. I want to add that I wish I could talk to every man and woman who works for NASA or who worked on this mission and tell them your dedication and professionalism have moved and impressed us for decades, and we know of your anguish. We share it. There's a coincidence today. On this day, 390 years ago, the great explorer Sir Francis Drake died aboard ship off the coast of Panama. In his lifetime, the great frontiers were the oceans, and a historian later said he lived by the sea, died on it, and was buried in it. Well, today, we can say of the Challenger crew, their dedication was, like Drake's, complete. The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us by the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. Thank you.